Hello, I hope you are enjoying the EPA course. My name is Miguel Macas Sequeira. I'm a researcher at the Center for Environmental and Sustainability Research of the Nova School of Science and Technology of Nova University of Lisbon. And in this lesson, I'm going to talk about how to plan a renewable energy community, and in particular, to give the example of the 10 steps that were taken in the case of the Lumiar technical assistance by EPA. So, as you might be aware by now, renewable energy community in the European context is defined as a legal entity that is based on open and voluntary participation, that is autonomous and effectively controlled by shareholders or members that are located in the proximity of the renewable energy projects that are owned or and developed by that legal entity, and the shareholders or members of which are natural persons, small and medium enterprises, or local authorities, including municipalities. So this is the European-wide definition. And the main purpose is to provide environmental, economic, or social community benefits rather than financial profits. So this is the what says in the European law. Portugal has transposed these European directives on energy communities in 2019 and 2022. However, in my country, still very few energy communities exist, and most projects are being developed by energy companies. So these are energy communities or collective self-consumption, better saying, where citizens remain passive and where energy poverty mitigation is usually not a priority. The Portuguese government estimates that 29% of the population in Portugal may be energy poor. So there is still a lot of potential for energy communities to mitigate energy poverty in Portugal. I'm going to present a specific case, so the Telheiras Renewable Energy Community, which was supported by the EPA Technical Assistance to Lumiar in 2022 and 2023, and I'm going to present the 10 steps that we took from the inception to the planning to the implementation of the energy community, with a stronger focus on planning components. The location of the Telheiras neighborhood is mostly in the Lumiar civil parish in Lisbon, so you can see the map on the left, and on the right I should say that this project is being promoted by the local partnership of Telheiras. So this is a network of over 20 local stakeholders in Telheiras, and also by the Lumiar Parish Council as the local government with responsibility over this territory. So, going right away to step number one was really pitching the idea to the local community. So, to develop an energy community in some place, you first of all need this idea to materialize. In the case of Telheiras, this happened already in 2020. So, this was a collection of ideas that was done with the local population, where people put small post-it notes on this structure. And one of the ideas that was placed there was really to let's produce our own renewable energy and share it among neighbors. This idea was then worked upon by the local partnership of Telheiras and by citizens, including through a brainstorming session in 2021. And after that, it was taken up by a volunteer-based working group, focusing mostly on three dimensions. So, communication and awareness about this topic, free energy counseling to local citizens, and what I'm going to speak mostly about today, the renewable electricity production and sharing. So there's really component of energy sharing within the energy community. So the step number two was to seek beneficial partnerships. So from the beginning, we understood that this project was to be done by citizens, with citizens and for the citizens, but energy communities are quite complex. So we knew that we also needed external support, and thus the local partnership of Telheiras and the Lumiar Parish Council applied to the EPA technical assistance, and they were one of the selected projects in the first call for technical assistance. The support of EPA is done by a triangle. So on one hand, the local government and the local partnership. On the other side, Copernico as a technical expert with more knowledge about this topic in Portugal, and also the EPA consortium represented in this instance by the NOVA-FCT. This support was from October 2021 to July 2023, so roughly 9 months, and it had the clear goal of setting up one of the first citizen-led and inclusive renewable energy communities in Portugal, tackling energy poverty and promoting energy democracy. So, as I said, energy communities in Portugal and a bit across Europe are a novel context. So we need to assess what are the legal and regulatory aspects that regulate these concepts. In Portugal, a few important aspects is that members must be within a 2 kilometer radius from the renewable energy production unit. In the case of low voltage systems, this might be different for other countries, of course. And also in Portugal, we now know that it's also only possible to share the energy that is not self-consumed in the generation sites. So, in the Portuguese case, and maybe in other cases, it is only after self-consumption in the building. For example, you have solar PV system in a rooftop, the building uses that energy, and only the surplus can be shared with the community. And also, in the case of Portugal, there are two main types of sharing coefficients. So a fixed coefficient. So imagine each member gets 5% of the surplus every time, or a variable coefficient. So this can be done in proportion with the consumption at each time, or it can follow a hierarchy. So there are multiple ways to share this electricity within the energy community. And importantly, this is done through smart meters in Portugal. So the smart meter data obtained in every 15 minutes interval allows the distribution system operator to allocate the generated electricity to each member. And also very important, energy communities also use the grids, the electricity grids. So in the case of Portugal, these energy communities must pay for grid access tariffs, even if in Portugal there is now a partial exemption on this cost. So these are all aspects that in different countries need to be assessed to understand what an energy community can do, how it can do it, and what also they cannot do. So step number 4, more on the practical side of the planning stage, was to select buildings and site renewable energy systems. So very practical. Where are we going to put the solar PV system? In this case, in other energy communities, it might be wind power, biomass, or other sources. And then to define how many members are going to join this energy community. This can be done either by first sizing the PV system and then defining the number of members according to that, or the other way around. You can first define that you are going to have a number of members and then put the solar panels in place that are able to produce enough energy for all these members. In this pilot project, the idea was really to use a building a building managed by the Lumiar parish, and that is used by the community for workshops, for dance classes and other activities, and to place 13 solar panels, which are already installed, with installed power of 7.15 kilowatt peak. For this system, it was estimated that the optimal number of members to avoid surplus, but also not to create redundancy and to make the savings very small. It was defined that 17 members was the correct number, with 13 members households from this location that must be in 2 kilometer radius invested in the solar PV systems and receive their fixed coefficient of the electricity. And on the component of energy poverty mitigation, 3 social members, so vulnerable families, that can join the project as beneficiaries and active participants, and they join on specific conditions to foster their participation. So step number 5 was to define the legal entity. So as we saw in the European law and also in the Portuguese one, an energy community must be a legal entity. And in our case, we selected a non-profit association. And moreover, already existing association, because this is, first of all, to avoid the costs of creating a new legal entity, but also to use an association that is already well known by the residents of these neighborhoods, which is already working for over 10 years in communication with the people from these neighborhoods, so to really create synergies. But this association, of course, was not ready to produce and share renewable electricity, so it was needed to update the legal status of the association. and also to establish a direct protocol with the local government, in this case the Lumiar parish, for the energy community. So to install the solar panels, to manage the production of energy, to contact with the relevant authorities. This protocol was established between the Viver-Telheiras Association and the Lumiar Parish Council. So this association is responsible basically for managing the energy community and in more detail for the licensing process, for payment of grid access tariffs, for maintenance, for insurance, for collecting funds from the members, informing, very important, to pass on the data about the energy sharing um, in the most real time possible, to organize general assemblies for decision making, and for selling the surplus of production that is now not used by the members. Very important here, all members of the energy community become associates of the association. So in the end, it is the energy community members that are managing the energy community. Uh, then a very important step was also to decide what was the financial and operational model here on a non-profit basis. So for the installation phase, first of all, the first step is really to license the project, to start the licensing, because only after that it is possible to install the project and to implement it. When the licensing is complete, the next step is initial investment. So each member invests a fixed amount in the solar PV system that is given to the Viver-Telheiras Association. The Viver-Telheiras Association collects the funds and does the solar photovoltaic system installation, being that the social members do not need to make an initial investment. So the initial investment for the social members is made by the local government, the Lumiar parish, and in a smaller amount by the other members of the energy community. So it's a solidarity mechanism that allows social members to join the energy community. So with the solar PV system already installed and licensing, the operational model is as you see in the picture. So this electricity that is generated is shared to the members. Being regular or social members, it does not make a difference. It's shared according to the fixed coefficients that were established before, and this is done without costs. What the members must pay is an annual fee in the association. So it's a normal fee that you pay associations mostly everywhere. And with these funds, the association can pay for maintenance, for insurance, for grid access tariffs, and for all other running costs. One potential source of income for the association is also to sell the surplus that is not used by the members, although in this case it is not expected to be much because the system was designed to maximize self-consumption. So we now are very advanced in the planning stage, but there is still one important issue that must be tackled before taking the energy community to the ground, which is defining internal regulations. So we have a legal entity, and the energy community must be run according to a certain set of rules. These rules should be approved by the members. For instance, in the Telheiras Renewable Energy Community, this was done through a general assembly, though the first general assembly of the energy community. And these regulations establish numerous aspects, such as the type of members and their rights and duties, member access requirements, what are the requirements for members to leave the energy community, how is the electricity shared, how is done the payment of annual fees, and also the value of the annual fee is also defined through a general assembly. What is the destination of the surplus production, and how are the general assemblies organized, and what is the decision-making methods. Very important in this project, each member has the right to one vote in general assemblies, and this right to one vote is equal if you are the local government, if you are a regular citizen, or if you are an energy poor citizen. So this is a democratic management of the energy community. So now that all stages are planned, the energy community can go to the ground, and a very important aspect is to communicate with the community and recruit members to join the project, because otherwise it is not possible to advance with the project. So in this case, there was a very strong collaboration with local stakeholders of the local partnership of Telheiras since the inception of the project, there was open and transparent participation for the local population. So there was this engagement across all the planning of the project. Local communication channels were very used, so such as local events, as you can see in the pictures, some festivals, public sessions, some communication materials, flyers, posters, social media, and also it was really fundamental, the word of mouth. So we are working at community scale, and the most effective way of passing a message is really for people to talk with their neighbors, with their friends, and to explain what is the energy community and what are the benefits of joining the energy community. Also important in more recent times has been the attention of national and local media, bringing the project to a wider audience, and also to publish easy-to-read informative guides about the project so that people can access all the information. While that communication strategy works well for households that can participate in the energy community and that can invest their own money, for vulnerable families, a more targeted and tailored approach was deemed necessary. So these vulnerable families, first of all, there was an assessment of energy poverty vulnerability performed for Lisbon and for the Lumiar parish by researchers at NOVA-FCT to assess from a macro scale what are the energy poverty vulnerability of Lumiar for winter and summer. And it shows that Lumiar is actually not one of the most vulnerable parishes in Lisbon, but still it has pockets of energy poverty in its territory. And who knows the territory best is really the local government and the local organizations, and particularly the social departments and the social organizations, social support organizations. So they can identify vulnerable families because they already provide social support to these families. They already know who they are and what are their needs. We also have, once again, the limitation of 2 kilometers radius, and the Lumiar civil parish defined some context-specific socioeconomic indicators related to income, to social benefits. So this is a way to identify vulnerable households, and of course these indicators will change according to municipality, according to country. Very important is vulnerable households are engaged by social assistances and other intermediaries. So these are people that they already know and that they already have a trustworthy relationship, but they still have an active decision to join the project. So they must say, of course, that they want to join the energy community. They are not forced to join the energy community. And as I said before, they have equal voting rights, which attempts to promote social inclusion and participation, and not only the sharing of energy. So finally, the 10th step in the case of Portugal, and in other countries these steps may have a different order, is really to license the renewable energy community. In the Telheiras case, this was done with the national authority, in Portugal the Directorate General for Energy and Geology, and it took 6 months for the initial licensing. It might also be necessary to license at municipal scale, as was the case in Telheiras. And the case of Telheiras, after the licensing was this first stage was done, managed to install the solar PV system in May 2024. Still, some additional steps are needed in this case. So to register the self-consumption unit, to send all the information to the authorities, to communicate what are exactly the sharing coefficients, and to sign the contract for the use of the grid. So licensing will always be a complex process to perform by an energy community. So some challenges and learnings from this case, mostly focus on the Portuguese case, but also might be applicable elsewhere. In Portugal, there is weak social movements, which are very dependent on volunteers and that lack energy literacy. And what we found is that it is really necessary to identify and engage the right stakeholders, both at local scale and other partners, and to build on existing community dynamics. There is also insufficient information, lack of knowledge, and few practical examples. So in this case, the technical assistance of EPAH was really instrumental because it provided partners that can provide support on a technical and legal and even financial way to the energy community. There are also financing struggles, especially when aiming to include energy poor families that cannot afford the upfront costs of solar PV installation. So there is a need to search for internal and external funding sources to manage this social inclusion. The electricity sharing process is still a bit unclear in Portugal and might be the same in other countries. So it's recommended to include a safety margin. And there is also, as I said before, some bureaucratic and slow licensing processes. And really here the solution is to keep on working in other activities, planning the next steps, and keep the community engaged. So the Tellerasweg renewable energy community is now in the second stage, let's say, scaling with the second solar PV system. And this is possible because the planning through the 10 steps is highly replicable to this case. So the EPAH technical assistance helped to map these 10 steps, which can now be taken much faster for future solar PV installations. And this is really the goal, to install more solar PV systems in Telheiras and VR, recruiting more members, not only households, but also small and medium enterprises, associations, and public buildings, as predicted by the European law, expanding the support to vulnerable families and mitigating energy poverty, so to keep on including families that would otherwise not be able to participate, and also to support the development of other energy communities in Portugal, and hopefully even by sharing experiences at the European Union scale. So thank you for your attention. I hope that you find interesting this real case example of the planning of an energy community in Portugal. If you want further information, feel free to contact the Viver Telheiras Association, which manages the energy community, the CENSE NOVA-FCT, Nova University of Lisbon, and also myself through the contacts that you see in this page. Thank you very much and enjoy the course.